Congratulations.
Yay! We're back up. Hi, we're back. Okay, sanity check. No, Pauline. I started and then it all froze, and so we had to figure out what was going on with the streaming. So I apologize. I am trying. I had my doubts if I could do this because I've got a lot of different software programs running all at once, and sometimes my computer has problems with all of the windows that I like to have open. So now I've got a lovely circle going on over here on your side. I'm trying to well, now it's giving me an error again. YouTube is not receiving enough video. Alexa, announce.
What's the announcement?
Jake, come back, please.
Announcing.
Jake, come back, please. Can you hear, see anything on your end?
Yeah.
Hi. Hang out for a minute. Okay, thank you. So it says it's not doing enough.
Yeah, and it looks like it's still showing you from a while ago.
Well, it's still going up here.
Right, but it was showing a whole lot of typing while I was looking at the screen.
That's
Your
because
hands weren't on the
when
keyboard.
you were right here.
Yeah, and I
and
just
it-
now came in.
Right. So it always has that lag.
Oh. So maybe that 20-second delay is turned on. I don't know. Alright, what do you need?
Well, it says my stream health is poor.
Okay.
So I guess just hang out and I'll...
It says it's not receiving enough video, so it's either just we've got bad upload speeds sometimes,
Okay,
or...
it just popped off. So now it's back to excellent.
Yeah, so it's just our connection.
Okay,
So it's all down to Spectrum.
great.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll try to make it through this, and I will try to pay attention over on my right-hand screen here about the stream health. So hopefully we'll have a productive gathering here. So early on, I was showing you some pictures in my portfolio that I loaded up. So I'm just going to kind of recap. I really enjoy doing portraits or people basically on wood, and my preferred wood so far is just basic Baltic birch ply. But when I do photos, I like to have that 3D element to it so that they're really kind of popping out of the wood. I don't like the photos on wood that look like they've just been printed as if you're printing them on paper, or that look like they have newspaper photo quality to them. So I've tried lots of different techniques and settings on the Glowforge and playing around in GIMP, which is free, and in Inkscape, with trying to figure out which way I like to do it, and have all of these various panels, photo boards all over my office and workshop, where I've gone through and done different settings with different with the picture and different photo editing, and then tried to keep track of different things. So you can see all of the different versions and how it's been. I have put notes on them and what I want to do with them and stuff. So same thing with different materials when you're testing, just trying to figure out what that material specific process is going to be. And so my challenge, or what I've been trying to work on more recently, is animals and more of the all blacks and all whites, and trying to get some kind of some of that to really pop out. So with the 3D, you know, if you zoom in, you can really see details in the woods. You can see the textures of the hair, you can see the highlights of the eyes and the teeth and the clothing, and it really provides a great perspective to it. So here's an example. This is actually a picture of a picture. So this was on my screen of what I was texting to a client of this is how I want to crop it down. And then here's the actual wood version. And you can see all the highlights and where it has enunciated the contour of the neck and dug into the wood, and the hair that seems like it's more flying in the breeze than the picture. And then this one was an example of a photo that I was really struggling with. I could not, there was just no way that it was going to come out. It just didn't have the contrast to really apply on just basic wood. So I painted the wood a really dark brown. It almost looks black in this picture. And then did an inversion and engraved away what was inverted, basically, to have them pop out. And so it was a really important picture for that family. But sometimes that photo quality isn't there, and so just trying to figure out what to do with them. So I haven't had a chance to load up all of the photos I did pre-holidays. I didn't put them in my Flickr gallery because they were secret, they were gifts, so I didn't want to advertise them. But one thing that I haven't done a whole lot of is stationery items, and so several months ago I asked one of my realtor friends if they would mind if I made a Christmas ornament for them and they could use it as a closing gift for their client. So he had sent me the picture and what he wanted on it, and then a handwritten message and his company logo. And so we crafted a double-sided Christmas ornament. The front had their house in it, and then across the bottom I had it engraved with their name, and then on the back it had the handwritten message from their realtor and then the logo for his business and mine. And so that actually generated some interest within his realty office, and so that's how I then got these commissions. But it's been a while since I've done that, and so now we're going to step through kind of that process of what I am and how to go about doing it. And feel free to try to pose questions on the live chat or in Facebook. I've got both open, so I'm trying to pay attention to them. We're back to having a poor stream, so hopefully this is still coming through just like it is supposed to. Might have to do it later or watch it later, I don't know. So I'm just going to keep going. So here's one of the photos. There's a lot of extra space here. These are all just cell phone pictures, and so I want to crop it down and put a circle over it. So I'm going to actually back up here. And the first thing I do is you download GIMP, and then in GIMP you'll go and you'll open whatever it is, wherever that picture is loaded. And so here's the picture that loads in. It's our original that we have. And now I'm going to draw a circle or an oval around it. So I'll grab and drag it. And then I can resize it to fit my needs for what I want to capture. And I need to think about what else I'm going to be putting on this ornament. And so my client sent me the address that she wants to go on it. And so I'll probably put the address down here in the grassy area. And I don't want to capture a lot of the neighbor's house. I probably don't need to capture so much of the yard. And then I also need to make sure that I leave room up here if I want to put a hole through the top part of the ornament, or if I want to put a loop on the top. So it just kind of depends on which one we're thinking about doing. So decide where, how you want to do your ornament and what you want to include in your picture and put your shape around it. And then once you get to that point, the other thing that I am going to do is some feathered edge approach, and so I'm actually going to make it just a little bit bigger so I have room to have the blurred edges going around it. So then I'm going to go up and I'm going to cut this from the picture, and I'm going to open a new workboard, and then I'm going to paste my picture back onto it. And so that is helping me to get rid of all the extra background that I don't need to have. In the background. And so we don't need the Glowforge or your laser to be doing extra work. There's no reason for it to laser out all of the scenery behind it that we don't want. So we're just going to cut that off, and it opens its own. And then it has these wavy lines going around it. And so over here, if we right click, we can anchor it to the layer. And it essentially is basically saying glue it down. When I went to paste it in the first place, I can paste in place. And that also could help with things. So we've got a lot of extra white going around here. We don't need that anymore. If we go up to image, then we can say crop to content, and it will just automatically zoom down to the bounding edges of our oval. So now our next step is to try to make it basically a black and white picture, because that's what the laser is going to be reading. I haven't successfully loaded in a color picture into the Glowforge and had it actually come out as anything that looks very good. So I do a lot of editing on the pictures before I put it in. And the primary tool that I do for that is under filters, and then I go to artistic, and then I go to photocopy. So when it first pops up, you have this dialog box here, and it gives you this preview screen, which is really great. So if you're not seeing it, then click on preview. You can also do this split view if you really want to, so you can see what the original picture looks like and what the new version is looking like. And when I'm doing this technique, I'm looking for that high contrast that I talked about, and also the picture isn't going to look very good, honestly, because we're trying to maximize what it is going to look like on the wood. So then I take my sharpness all the way up to 100%. Because the lower it is, the blurrier it is. Blurrier, that's a word. And so it's not really capturing a lot of the detail, so I want as much of my detail as possible. So that's the sharpness, and I always set that at 100%. And then depending on the picture, almost always I take the black up to 100%. So it's just a matter of then playing around with these dialog boxes that are over here to try to get to your best picture. So then if I take my % white down, you can see that the picture is getting darker. And then my mask radius is really going to be the biggest that I play with. So on this, if we take it down to just where that border is, so now you can see it's kind of fuzzy. It just looks like a diluted version of a black and white picture. So we just keep notching it up a little bit, and then all of a sudden it flips over to this different format. And if I keep taking that notch up a little bit more, Then it goes into basically outline mode, is what I like to call it, where it's taking each of those details and putting a line around it. So we're almost getting into like this cartoon mode. If I take this up really high, it's like this old vintage photo, and there's a lot of shadows going on in it and stuff. This isn't going to engrave very well. It's going to make all of this all dark and blurry and under here and kind of around the edges and stuff. So that's too much. It's overexposed. So we're looking for that balance down here where there's a really great picture but still has a lot of good dark lines to it. And then we can also play with this % white. And if I take it up, it gets wider or darker. And a lot of people don't like this look, and a lot of people do. I think it's all to each their own. So when it engraves, it's going to have more of a depth to this dark area going around it, and this shadow over here. And then of course around the bushes and stuff. But when you're looking at the photo from a distance after it's been engraved, it helps to provide that kind of 3D look to it, and it pops a little bit more. So I'm just kind of looking at different areas here, like focusing in on the door and the windows. Sometimes there's some details that you might want to have. So if you have a reflection that you want to make sure is still coming through, or some kind of features. You know, here's a good example of if you just wanted to engrave the outlines. Like these would be perfectly fine. Maybe do a little bit more. So I'm just going to keep playing with it here real quick. Not real quick. It takes a little bit. There we go. I like that. And now with this part, so this looks like a pretty great photo, but when the process that I use is the very power look, and so your whites don't actually end up popping very well. Your grays, and overall looks like it's really burnt as a whole image. And so trying to keep some of that white in there helps with getting it to be light on the wood. So I'm going to just leave it at that for now. And then I hit OK, and then it applies the filter effect. You can play with other filters too, which I've done, but this is my base method. So others are going into doing the color balance and your exposure and your shadows and highlights and brightness and contrast and such. You know, it's just a matter of getting in it and playing with how photos look. So you saw that big, it totally popped when I played with that color. So if I take it up, it's too white. And you can always reset it back to what you had originally. I like my original one here a lot better. So now we're at the point that we need to feather, and this took a little bit of learning. So basically, I'm going to draw another oval, and bear with me because this is where I have to take a walk down memory lane because I don't exactly remember how I did this. And I want to right click on my layer over here, and I want to alpha to selection. I probably did that in the wrong order. So alpha to selection, and then right click again and go up to scale layer. Nope. So then we go over here to our trusty internet and I say GIMP feather edges. Select feather, but where is it? Oh, maybe I have to do it. Oh, okay, that was my problem. So I'm going to take it back, alpha to selection, and then go over here and right click, select, and then we're going to feather. And then you can play with how much you're going to feather it by. And so we'll just leave it at 100 right now. And then you go feather, and you do invert. Yep, that didn't work. Alright, bear with me. I know I did this. And I've done it since. There was a question that just popped up of what program this is. I'm using GIMP, which is free. Can Adobe be used as well? Yeah, you can use Adobe. You can use, so basically the comparable programs to GIMP and Inkscape is GIMP is compared to Photoshop and Inkscape is compared to Illustrator. So Photoshop is your photo editor and Illustrator is more of your layout and design editor. But both GIMP and Inkscape are free, and it's been a very long time since I've used those programs. But you could definitely do it. So right now I'm just trying to remember how I did it. No, it had that. Then I go select, feather, select, invert. Well, we might have to move on here while I figure out how to do the feathering part. So basically you have your image and then you save it. So I'm gonna go save as, and I need to go put it where. And then you go File and export it. So I saved it as a XCF file, which is what GIMP's file extension is native for. but then you actually have to export it as a picture file. And so I'm gonna video demo, export, and then you have all of these choices for how you want to do it, and you know, the compression level and how good you want it to be, and then you export it and it turns it into a picture. So now I have a picture file that I can load into Inkscape. So I have Inkscape open. This is again comparable to Illustrator. Then I go File, Import, and I bring in the picture that I just worked on. So there's my picture. I'm just going to bring it in as the size that I have it already in, that was in GIMP, and it already has all these white edges, so Glowforge is just going to ignore the white. It's a picture, and now we have to decide how we're going to cut it. So right now it's just the picture. It doesn't have any way to take it out of the wood. So I can then just put a circle around it or match it up to the picture that I have here and line it out that way. So it has these tools here. If I stretch across, I can see how big my picture is. But I know that this and this need to be the same size. So this one is 7.153. I'm going to lock in my aspect ratio so I don't screw up my picture when I'm moving things around. I'm going to just go ahead and take this down to being about 5 inches wide. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then I'll take my circle and I'll make it 5 inches wide. And then this one actually needs to get unlocked. So I've got 3.883. So I'm going to turn this one into 3.883. So then these two together, if I align them on top of each other, I can make that so that it's transparent on the inside, but it still has a stroke going around the outside. So here is my image with my circle going around the outside. There's a lot of other things that I could do with this image in GIMP. I can go through and I can try to clean up the skyline here to make it a little more uniform. I can do a little bit of editing along here, try to make this door pop out a little bit more, but I'm just going to give this a go and have it running on the Glowforge while we're doing some others. So you can see it running on the Glowforge too, so we're not using up so much of your time. So I can put a circle here to cut out because we need some way to hang it, or I can put a little knob on the top of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this nice little knob up here. I don't need that one. And let's see, how big do I want it to be? My ribbon is usually about 0.4, 0.5. So I think I'm going to make my hole about 0.5. So I just pulled out my calipers here because I'm very much a audio-visual kind of person. I need to see it and feel it and touch it, so tactile. So we're going to do 0.5 and 0.5. So here's our circle. If I duplicate it, I can do Control D to duplicate in this program, and I can make it just be a little bit bigger on both sides. So now I've got two circles, and what I'm going to do with those is I'm going to bring them together. And I'm going to position them over here. And actually I'm going to lock these two together. I'm going to group them. And then I'm going to take these two and I'm going to center it so that this is actually in the center of my circle here. And actually bring that down just a tad bit more. And then I'm going to ungroup these because it's all centered and in the position that I want it to be. And I'm going to take this one and so the outside circle and my oval shape here, and I'm going to union them together. So now it got rid of this cut line that was going down here, and it made it a cut line that stops at this point and then hooks around and then comes down again. So I still have this cut line here, so I need to decide if I want that one to stay the way it is or if I want to bring it up to be the edge of this picture. And for now I'm fine with it being just the way that it is, and I'm just going to leave it. So here is our basic ornament shape with the picture inside. So the next tip I want to show you is to put a bounding box around your item. So what we're doing right now is creating another cut box. And this is to help your shape when we're doing our double-sided. So we're going to have two different cut lines. We're going to engrave the picture, and then we're going to cut it out as the box. And then we're going to flip it over and we're going to engrave the back side. And then when we're done engraving the back side, we'll cut out the actual ornament, if that makes sense. So that's an approach that you can do. You can also do it this way and just trust that your shape, that you haven't messed with it too much, and that you can just flip it over in place with your wood. So a couple of different ways to do it. I don't mask my wood when I'm doing a picture. I let it do its thing and do the picture. But because I want to put some lettering on this and engrave the name and everything over the top of this, after it's done running the picture, I'm going to go through and I'm going to put a layer of masking on it. And so this bounding box actually is super helpful because I'm going to go through and I'm going to cut it. I'm actually just going to make it just a tad bigger here, so we don't have too much flare around the edges. And I'm going to cut out the box going around the outside. I'm going to take it out, I'm going to mask over my square and place it in so that it's upside down in this way. And then on the back side we'll put in our message from the realtor. So I'm just going to make something up right now because I don't want to disclose too much information. So we're just going to say, congratulations, Shoshana. And in Inkscape you can, center it. We can pick out some really great font that we like using. I like Easy November, or really Pet Shop. I also really like some of the handwriting ones. So Biner. Yeah, I'm just going to go back to Easy November for now. So here's my fonts. I'm going to make them green. I'm going to blow that up a little bit. And I'm going to put it over here on my picture. And then I can choose to center it in all of this. Actually, I need to center pretty much everything. There we go. So congratulations, or congratulations on your first home. Pull this out so you can see it. Make it go down a little bit and put it back in the middle. So I'm loading in what I'm putting on both sides all at the same time. So that's my back side. I can throw in the logo that we want to use. So here's their business logo. I actually took time to vector it last time, so I want to try to actually. So I can put a logo on it. I can also then do, let's see, this is going to be the home of Smith at 1412 Jackson. Pick out some nice font. I'm going to try to fit this inside in the grass. So I could do that a couple of ways. I don't really like that look. Let's see, let's duplicate our circle that we got going on here. So here's our outside. We can take this, and we can, so I chose both of them, then I can go up to text and I can put it on the path. And then I can move it around. Actually gonna make this a little bit more circular. Let's just redo this. That little nub is screwing with things, so I'm just gonna go up. I'm gonna draw another oval about the same size. Doesn't have to be perfect. You're the creator. So here's my shape. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to put it on the path. I'm going to flip it on the inside, and then I can rotate this just a little bit to get it to come up. And a circle would have been better to do. Let's actually turn that into a circle. Sure doesn't look like one. Can stretch it out and do all kinds of things with this. So if you rotate it, that rotates the words. And you can shrink it down and just kind of play with the shape of things. And then we just turn off the circle. So if I get rid of that, here's this, and I can just fit it to whatever I'm trying to do. So if I move this up here, make it some bright shiny color so that I can see it better. This circle right here is what is controlling my shape. So it's just a matter of playing with it to get it in to do what it is that you want it to do. And you can reposition this anywhere within that. I can redefine this, and maybe I just want it to say 1412 Jackson. make this be bigger. And there we go. So I'm not going to spend too much time, but you kind of get the idea. So this is down here, and we don't need it to be there. We can just turn it off, hold shift down, and do white. So shift is what is going to help you in Inkscape with your outside lines, and if you don't hold shift, then you can fill it. So I can fill it, or I can clear it. If I hold shift, I can clear it or fill it or what have you. So I've got this in place for my front. And I've got this, that's going to be my back. Both of these are cursive fonts or scripts, so we need to make sure that we are welding it together. So if I switch over to display mode into outline, neither one of these are vectors yet. So I need to first go path, object path. That turns it into a vector, which is what the Glowforge reads for fonts. You can see that there's these overlapping pieces to it. So I need to actually weld that all together. And if I don't, the Glowforge reads it in an on-off format. So it's going to be engraving this part. It's going to turn off for this section right here, but it's going to turn back on for these sections. So that's the best way that I've been able to come up with for explaining how that works. So again, path, object path, we've got all of these different overlapping, so we need to weld it together. So if we do that, we can go up to path and then click on union. For some things that you're doing, when doing text, what I found is you have to actually go path combine and then path union. And there we saw that all of that magically moved together, so it's one continuous script. Same thing over here, path combine, path union. And there we have all of our different pieces. So then if we switch over to normal mode, we're going to grab these two together, move them over. Actually, I like how it's offset, so I'm going to group that. I'm going to move this over. I'm going to grab these, and I'm going to move it together. So now I've centered this, and it looks like one big giant blur, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn different things on and off when I load it into the Glowforge user interface for engraving. So File, Save As, First House, Closing, Ornament. I always put dates on things on my files. So I have different versions of different files, and they all have the different dates on them. So then I'll upload it. Okay, so it loaded into Glowforge. It took a couple of seconds, and now it has all of these different pieces that you can see. But when I grab this, it should be all together, and it definitely looks a little confusing. I've got my Baltic birch ply in here, my scrap piece that I loaded in. I'm going to go ahead and do set focus and have it focus in. This is just 1/8, but always make sure that you're measuring your material. I've had my material definitely change across batches, and so that makes a big difference when you're doing things that are pressure fit and assembling things together, or pieces together. but for pictures and stuff, it doesn't usually seem to make a difference. We just want to make sure that we do the focus first. Also, when I'm doing pictures, because I use Baltic birch because I like the wood grains. And I like to, for some pictures, I make sure that there's not a whole lot of character going on and it's just pretty seamless. For other pictures, I'm paying attention to what's going on in the pictures and how that can play into what's going on in the wood and how that can play into the picture. So sometimes I'll go into a project picking out the wood specifically for the photo that I'm doing, or I'll just put it in and then play around with where I see it. So you can see the wood grain in your camera and you can line up your picture to help with that accentuating of it. This one is just a standard house. We don't need to really do much else. Sometimes if there's like a knot or something, I'll try to have that be an accent piece. It really just kind of depends. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to engrave our photo. So over here on the left hand side we have the picture that we edited in GIMP. It's also got another picture, the Team Idaho Real Estate logo. So it automatically loads in our raster files first, and then it brings in the vector files, and then it lists the shapes or what we're cutting. Because the Glowforge has been programmed to do certain things in certain orders, and I'm going to actually reorganize this on the left hand side to do it in the order that we're going to be doing it. So first we're going to engrave our picture, so that's in the right spot. The next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to cut out our box, our bounding box. So that's what's going to free our piece from the wood. And I just noticed up here that I've got my little honeycomb pin there on the edge, so I don't want to cut into that because sometimes when it runs into the honeycomb pin, it doesn't cut all the way through. I don't care about the honeycomb pin, but so first we're going to do the picture, then we're going to do the bounding box, then we're going to take our wood out and we're going to mask over the picture, and then we're going to put it back in the upside way, and we're going to put our 1412 Jackson on top. So it's engraving over the top of the picture that we already had, but I want that masking to be there so that when I'm engraving that 1412 Jackson, it's not providing that burnt aura look or that flare that goes around it. It's trying to do a clean engrave. So I'm hoping that the masking will stick onto my picture. Then when it's done with that piece of it, we'll take it back out, we'll flip over the box, and then we'll engrave our congratulations on your first house, our Team Idaho logo, and then we'll cut out the final shape for it. And we're going to leave the masking already on there because when we cut out that final shape, I don't want the honeycomb to burn around the edges of our completed picture that we've done. So for photo settings, I have saved my Baltic Birch 1/8 photo. This is almost always the settings that I use for it. It's a speed of 1000. It's full power. I do run the Pro machine, so full power on my end means it's doing the full 45 watts, except I'm pulling the power. So I use the grayscale vary power function. Minimum power set to 0, and then my LPI is at 340 and I just do one pass. Some pictures I do 2 passes for. There's a couple of scenery photos that I've done that have a lot of trees and the mountain with the river. And so on the first pass it looks great, but on the second pass it's phenomenal with the contour and the contrast of it popping out with that 3D look. So the way that the vary power works is it is going to read the grays and the whites and the blacks, and it will automatically adjust its power settings for the laser. It's going to pull the power for me. So if it's in a wider area, it's not going to burn as hot as if it's in a black area where it's going to be doing more of the power. And that will then create this melding together of all of the colors, which is very different than when you do the dot look. So when you do this convert to dot here or convert to pattern, if I switch it over to convert to dot, you can also do your pattern to 3D. But what it's doing is it's saying I'm going to laser a dot to try to make up for that darkness. So it's darker in this area, and I'm not going to do as many dots over here in this other area that is whiter. And so we have, oops, too close. Might need to go move my board. There we go. Actually, let's double check our cut here. Make sure it can turn on. Good, it's gonna hit that though. I don't really care about this wood piece, and this is all just testing, so I'm gonna move it down. So I'm gonna turn off my cut box, don't forget to do that. And hit ready. Now you all got to see me take a really big drink of water because I have a tickle in my throat. Okay, 26 minutes, yay. I'm going to turn on our camera so you can see it. So you can see what I see. And I'm going to continue trying to do that feather effect here. So my machines are in the other room in my workshop, and I'm going to run over and push the button and then come back. But I've got a camera on it. And I've got the volume turned off on the camera, so that way we're not getting any feedback here. It can be a little loud with the camera right above the Glowforge. So back to this picture, I want to try to do some more cleaning up. I just wanted you to see the process and not have to wait several hours while I'm working on this one. So on here, there's a couple of other tools in GIMP that you can use to try to clean up. There's a cloning tool and a stamp tool, and then of course you've got brushes and erasers and stuff. So same thing in a lot of other photo editing. The actual ornament that we're making isn't nearly this big that I've got it zoomed into. So as far as like the detail and how blurry it's going to be, we're about more like this in our view. So it should come out pretty good as far as what the actual photo looks like. If I zoom in though, there's a couple of things that we could do. We could try to clean up some of these lines. I don't know how much this extra pixelation and stuff is going to show. We've also got this funny edge going on up here, which I'm not too worried about. If we do the feathering, that will also take care of itself. So, let's see. I'm going to just kind of play with some of the features here in our modes. See if I can get my feathering to work. looking it back to where I first started playing with things. Oh, you guys can see this. Sorry. I was just looking at the different comments, making sure that I have... There isn't any questions going on over here. No, this is totally a very exciting stream right now. I'm just double checking everything while the laser is going and trying to remember how to blur the edges in GIMP. So then hopefully next time I will know how to do it. I did it a couple weeks ago with no problem on something else that I was doing. But my brain is completely out the window. And I could watch a YouTube tutorial, but we're already on YouTube, so I don't know that that would work very well. Okay, so we're going to create our where we want to feather it to. And then we're going to select, invert, select, feather. Okay. Delete. Ha! That is the step we were missing. Okay. Select, invert, select, feather. Let's change this. Delete. Ta-da! Now we have just feathered our edges, so it makes it more ethereal, I guess, to what we're trying to do. Very nice. Okay, so I'm going to move on to a different picture. So here's a couple of shots of the same house or unit that she sent me, and you know, I zoomed in on them, and none of them are very good photos because how can you when it's a whole bunch of, I mean, there's cars and stuff. So I was looking at the different pictures and trying to decide which one to use, and this one is actually the best. This unit here is the one that we're trying to capture. This one's a lot blurrier when I zoom in, so it doesn't really have the detail I need. So we're going to get rid of that one. And this one, again, if we zoom in, there just, if we tried to do this, it would be a bunch of fencing and cars and such. So we're going to get rid of that one. And we're going to focus on this one. So for the 1714B is the one that we like. And I don't want to have, you know, this picture or the car too much in it, but I'm going to use my ellipses tool. You can also do other shapes, like you could do a box ornament if you want to, but I just like kind of more of a traditional roundish piece to it. So I'm going to go and I'm going to select the area, and this is in GIMP, that I want to accentuate because they just bought a house or a property, which is a big deal for them. And so we want to kind of memorialize, there we go, that for them. I could go bigger over here, but I want the focus to be on this property here. So I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to open a new one, and paste, and anchor it, and then image, cropped content, zoom in. And there is our image. It's already nice and fuzzy bordered because that was the thing that we did in GIMP previously. And I'm going to go over to my filters, and I'm going to switch over to artistic. Actually, let me show you another one here. So this cartoon filter is kind of fun, and it has some really cool effects, but when I do that, sometimes I'll do image mode and then flip it over to grayscale, and then I go to filters and go to artistic and then cartoon. So that provides us with that black and white kind of look to it, and then you can play with the percentages of your, you know, how you want it to look and such when you're engraving. But this is all very dark. So I'm going to go back to my artistic, I'm going to go photocopy, take my sharpness all the way up, take my percent black all the way up, doesn't really do anything, so, and then start playing with my percentages, my mask radius. So again, if I take it down, there's nothing there, but if I slowly bring it up, it now has this faded out ghost-like appearance. And then I keep going up on my scale, and it blinks out, and then it starts bringing in the outlines of the pictures, or picture that it's trying to do. So you can drag it, or you can actually type in numbers over here. So if I wanted to see what 5 looked like, I could just type in 5. And I really liked that boundary that we hit here, right there. I'm going to take it just a little bit more because I want this black edging to be around my pieces. So when I said earlier in the stream, it's not going to look very good in the black and white photo so much, but when you engrave it on the wood, it pops better, in my opinion. You can also play with your percent white, and if you recall earlier, if you have your percent white down, this is just a bunch of gray, so when you're doing your very power, there's not a whole lot of contrast here. There's just going to be a lot of gray and so it's not going to have very many details. So the more white that you have in your contrast, the better off it's going to be with actually showing up on the wood. And I think that's pretty good. Let's see if there's any more. Nope. We're going to export it. And then bring it into Inkscape. So here's my picture. It's much larger because the resolution that of the original picture is much larger. So we're going to lock in our aspect ratio and take it down to the ornament size that we're trying to create. So decide on how big you want your ornament to be. And so I have my tape measure here on my desk. I've got my calipers on my desk. So a 5-inch ornament is going to be this wide here. So this is 3 inches and then 2 inches. So that's a pretty good picture size. It's 3.7 to use, so it'll be about this. And then put your ellipse around it. Decide if you're going to have a little knob on the top or if you're going to try to put a little hole on the inside. I'm going to go ahead and just do a hole on the inside. If you hold down Control while you're drawing your circle, it'll make it as an actual perfect circle. If I go too fast, then it won't, but it should snap to it. There we go. To the size it is that you're trying to do. So decide what you want your circle to be, and earlier I said I want it to be 0.5, so then I'm going to put a circle here in the middle of the roof and make sure it is centered. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit more. Make sure it's centered. Control all for everything and just center everything. So there's our ornament, and then we can put the address and the name on this one. The name that just popped into my head was Hatfield. You know, Smith and Hatfield, never mind. Pick a nice font. So I have 1,000,000 fonts. It's an exaggeration. I have 1,000,000 fonts installed on my computer, which is one of the reasons I think why we're running so slow. But I need to spend time and actually go through and uninstall them. So I use a program called WordMarket, and it uses Adobe Flash, which here shortly isn't going to be supported in Chrome, but it takes all the fonts, and so I can say Hatfield. It's going to delay for a minute. Maybe. So then it reads all the fonts that are on my computer that have been installed, and I can just scroll through it and look at everything. So that's kind of nice. And I'm just going to go randomly pick a font here. author fun. I know I'm being less random about it. I just get so picky about fonts. This is another wormhole in and of itself, just spending time trying to find the right font to represent what it is that you're trying to do. So let's see, I'm going to use Baby Ground. So I grab my font or my word. We're going to use Baby Ground. Perfect. I want it to spread out just a little bit more. Too far. There we go. I'm going to duplicate this so it keeps my font, so Control D. We're going to make up an address. B. Grove Street. And then I just kind of play around with the placement, so I can decide actually that I want this to be up here, or I can say I want this to be up here, and I want this to be down here. So then if I bumped my circle out, I need to make our little nub group them together, move it down into it, center it, and oh, you have to ungroup this. It won't let you try to do a union with 3 selected. You have to do them separately. So here's this one. We go path, union, to stick it all together. And actually that looks pretty good. One thing though that I do want to do is if I go in here, I see these corners. I don't want them to be nearly so angular. So I'm going to try to smooth this out a little bit. Not by doing that, I'm not. So when you start playing with them like this, you're going to lose your ability to mirror it and flip it around, which is why it's really nice to have that square bounding box, because then you're going to cut it out from the back side. So I don't know if this is any better. Make like a UFO shape or something. So I'm going to take it back to the way we had it. Too far. So there's our beautiful ornament that we'll print. So let's check on Glowforge. Three and a half minutes. Woo. No, this is riveting. So our picture is coming out pretty good over here, though. I'm looking off to the side because I have another monitor over here that the full video is showing on. Sure looks like a house. Anybody has any experience with trying to do streaming on YouTube via OBS, I would appreciate some tips. Definitely shoot me a message or something, because I don't know why. I'll just have to watch the playback. Hopefully it's streaming and you guys aren't seeing too much of a lag. We're at an hour and 17 minutes now for our stream, so thanks for bearing with us. So I've got 6 of these to whip out tonight. I actually don't really like all of the placement and stuff on this, but I was just slapping stuff together so you could see it. So the next step, that when this is done here, we're about to hit cutting. Oh, no we're not, because I turned it off. Well, there's this. Let's turn this back on. So we can do stuff to the file. It's already broadcast. You can play with this, all of this, all you want, because once it's broadcast, whatever you do over here doesn't matter. So it's almost done with the engrave, and I want it to now go and cut out the box around this. So it'll cut the box around it, and then I will stay over there and put some masking over the top of it, and then put it back in place and get it to, we'll then engrave our 1412 Jackson on the front. Sorry, I had to go look at it in person. I should have been doing this while I did it. All right. It's hard to see, but it looks really amazing in person. I'm very pleased with how it came out. So this, like if I run my finger over it, the depth of my fingernail, it goes into these crevices here where this black is. And so like it really pops on the image and has a really great texture to it. The bush that's in front of the house here, it has some texture. You can see how it's deep right here, and so that is, you know, symbolic of it going under the bushes and stuff and all that. There's this trash can right here. It's really deep too. So you just have a different style with this approach. The screen door here, the pictures of that, there's quite a bit of little depth here. If I use my calipers, I can tell you. You know, it's not a ton. It's not an 1/8 inch or anything, but that window is recessed by 0.036. Same thing with the front window here and what you can see. And there's the gutter that's kind of hanging out in front of the shadow here. So, anyway. Our next step is we're going to mask it. I have the big large rolls of the white masking, but I'm just going to use our blue painter's tape here for this one since it's not that big. And I'm going to mask the front of our photo. See if you can see what I'm doing here. Paying attention to where you're planning on actually engraving the words, because we don't want to have 2 layers of tape. I don't want to have my blue tape overlap it. Midway. So if you would recall here, if I put it here down here, that'd be cutting through the word, and so then the laser has to work through 2 layers of tape, and we don't want it to do that because it will offset where it's only working through 1 layer of tape. So right now we're just protecting our already engraved image. And then we'll stick it back in. That's not big enough. I need it to be able to fit back into its spot where I cut it out. So these chunks right here are not going to be a good idea. Here we go. So then just make sure that you rub your tape down. There's lots of different things you can use. I just pretty much use whatever is at hand. You can go purchase a brayer or whatever those things are called. But really, you just want to make sure that it's sticking. Except with this though, I want to be careful not to have it stick too much. So your tape doesn't want to be too highly tacky, because then when I peel this off, I've already engraved part of the picture, and I don't want all of that dark embers to get all peeled away from where the picture engraved. So now we have our masked photo, and we're going to go stick it back in. Right the blue part up so that we can engrave our 1412 Jackson on it. So I did not move the board. In fact, it popped up a little bit down here on the, it popped up down here on the bottom a little bit. So I made sure to put some extra pins down because I've got wood hanging out of the pass-through, but I didn't put a support on the outside because it wasn't sticking out that far. So when I put it back in, you can see that it now looks like it's off. But do not move your design. Trust that your material hasn't moved and your design is not moving. So even though the camera says it is, leave it alone. So we're going to select our material. And we're just going to set focus back onto our design. And then make sure that we turn off what we need to turn off and then turn on what we want to turn on. So I'm going to engrave it, and I am just going to go 1,000 speed. I'm going to take it up to full power. I need to cut through that tape and also leave a pretty good engraving onto my picture. 225 LPI is probably fine. I'm going to go ahead and do 270. Just so we don't have too many line elements with it. And now you'll notice here I set focus and it looks almost completely spot on. I'll move this over here. So there's our rectangle. If I turn it back on again so you can see. Not rectangle, square, whatever this shape is called. Going around the edge of it. So let's get that going. You know, people usually complain about gaining weight over the holidays, and I did not gain weight. I lost a little bit of weight because I got some serious exercise going back and forth between my office and the workshop room with the forges in it. So now we're just engraving our 1412 Jackson. And then I'll flip it over and have congratulations on your first home and Team Idaho Real Estate, and then I'll cut out the actual ornament shape. So again, if you're watching and this is actually still successfully streaming or not lagging too much, feel free to write a question in the comments. I'm trying to check them. And or you can message me on Facebook and, you know, send me questions later or on here. I really enjoy doing pictures. They have a really great sentimental value for customers. So let's see, while we're waiting I can show you how I do people. our family pictures. So this is a picture of my son as a baby. My other son is peeking in through the door right now. He's getting ready for bed. Let's see. Let's rotate her. I do not remember how to do that. There we go. Okay. So I don't need all the background. Another thing about pictures when you're doing the editing, isn't he cute, is your picture and your background. So there's a lot of the same coloring kind of going on in here, so it's going to make it harder for him to show up in the background. So one thing actually that you can do is you can remove the background and then have him just be on regular wood as your background, or you can remove part of the background or just do different things with it. So our 1412 Jackson is done engraving. We're going to pop over and flip it over and then set our settings. So it looks like it has a pretty good deep engrave on it, and I had a little bit of trouble getting it out because the tape definitely added some to our kerf there, or it fit snug back in. So we're just going to go ahead and set focus right here over the top of home. I've ignored all that. I need to ignore this now, and I'm just going to so I could mask the back if I want to, if I don't want that burnt aura look. I like the burnt aura look, but it just kind of depends on, I tend to ask the client what it is they want to do. And now I'm just going through. So on my cut settings here, my speed is 170, full power, it's 1/8 inch Baltic birch ply. Seems to work really well. This is the Baltic birch 1/8 photo. So I have it set on 1000, full power, very power, minimum power 0, 340 lines per inch. This is just my standard full pew that I have saved in here. It's 1000 in full power. I can take it up to 270 if I wanted to here. And I just now have set everything to go on the back. And it'll take us a whopping 8 minutes and 7 seconds here. So I'm gonna flip back to GIMP while we're waiting. And you can see my adorable child. Oh, wish they were young longer. And let's see. So when I'm doing photos, I look at the different aspect ratios for the standard photo sizes. So 4 by 6, 5 by 7, 8 by 10, 11 by 13, or 10 by 13. We can go up to as big as about 10.9 by 19 for our bed size. I started to figure out a way, or trying to figure out a way to do pass-through where I'm doing larger photos, but I don't think we're quite there yet with the Glowforge and where they're trying to go. But eventually, the plan is, or what I believe the plan is, or I've heard, is that you should be able to do your photo, slide it up through the pass-through, and then continue where you left off with your photo, and then it's seamless. Like you couldn't even tell that there was a gap there. Obviously, I think we're a little always on that. So I've been trying to figure out ways that I could do it on my end, but then you had to do, real world stuff and pay for bills and all that stuff. So back to GIMP. If you use your rectangle tool here, you can drag it around your subject and decide, what pieces or parts of it that you want to keep. You can also, so that would be, one way to do it, and then that's just the size that you go for. Or you draw your rectangle and then go over here to your size. Make sure that you guys can see what I'm doing here. Yep. Flip it over to inches and then set your size it is that your client has said they want. So let's say they want an 8 by 10. So we'll do 8 by 10. So that is the aspect ratio for a 10 by 8. And you lock in your fixed ratio. And now when you adjust this, it's going to keep that same aspect ratio regardless of where you're at. And then you can move your box around and drag it, resize it, do whatever you want with it. So I always get confused on this because they have their sizes reversed. So when I need to do an 8 by 10 picture, then I have to type it in different than when I type it in on the Inkscape side of things. So anyway, I decide where I'm going to have it, and then I crop to selection. And it cuts it down to that bounding box that I selected. And then we go to filters, artistic, photocopy, crank up the sharpness, crank up % black, and then start playing with our other pieces. And bring up that radius. Actually take it all the way up and see where we're at. So if we're up too high, the eyes are just going to be these deep black burnt in pieces on the wood. So we don't want that. So if we take it down a little bit, we're just going to keep taking it down. So eyes and teeth are typically what I focus on the most because sometimes they can come out really creepy. And sometimes there's not much that you can do about it, so that, when the photo is at a distance, it looks great. But if you're up looking at it close, then your subjects can look like they're, demons or something, and their eyes and their mouths are all funny. And that's just the way that this approach works, because you're trying to create more of a 3D effect, a more real interpretation of the photo than as opposed to just putting it on the very surface of the wood. Alexa, lights on. It's 9 p.m. here. We have lights out that automatically happen on some of our lights. All right. I don't even know how old he was at this point. That was 2014. So then I save it as the XCF file in case I ever want to go back to it and do some more editing, and then I also export it as a picture. Make sure all my levels are up high, that I am exporting as in high of a format as I can. Got a bit burnt out after the holidays, and so I've taken quite a bit of a break, longer than I planned on, so trying to get back into the swing of things with doing forging full time. And then we open up Inkscape and we'll do a new document. And we'll import in the picture it is that we're trying to do. So the same process would apply if you're trying to do a photo picture on an ornament, or a photo engrave on an ornament. If you want it to be a round shape or an elliptical shape, then you would just draw the ellipses. So it doesn't matter what picture it is that you're trying to do, it's still the same process. There's my picture. I'm going to go ahead and rotate it. Something that you might not know, you can engrave either way on the Glowforge, but if you have a choice to which direction you're going to go, choose to have your longest edge be what's going along the x-axis, because then it will go faster on the Glowforge, because then it's just kind of zipping through it. That's just something that... So lock in your aspect ratio, change it so that you're actually at the settings that you want it to be. Grab your box. I've got snapping turned on over here, so if I go over near it and I click down, it's automatically snapping to that corner, and then it's going to snap to that corner. So sometimes it's very irritating to have that snap, but sometimes it's helpful. So now the only thing that I'm doing in Inkscape is bringing the picture in, sticking my cut line around it, and then saving it so that I can load it into the Glowforge. And I actually haven't done this picture yet of the kids, or my little boy. I tend to name it the same thing, just make sure that the extension is the SVG as opposed to the PNG or XCF or whatever it is. Okay, so let's go get our ornament. My scissors seem to have walked away. Okay, so here's our ornament on the back side. And you can see it's got the burnt look. And so I would ask my client, you know, if they want it to be a clean engrave on the back, can we mask it? Or sometimes I'll just make that call and mask it anyway. But I really like the burnt aura look most of the time. And then it's got their logo on the back. And so then the front, we're going to peel off our masking. So there's a downside, which could be solved by just a quick. So I took off the masking that was on the top here, and you can see that where this masking was, it protected the wood. And so there's the burnt look down here, and then it's got a nice clean break. So I could take a piece of sandpaper and just kind of rub over the top of that to blend it in. But we're going to peel off. Here's the great reveal. So now we have an ornament. And clapping ensues. Woohoo! So then you take your ribbon, and if I had scissors, then I could show you how but I'll just go ahead and demonstrate. I pull out my ribbon, I figure out how long it's going to be, snip it off at the end, and then I tie the two ends together so that it's overlapping, and do just a standard knot here. I'm trying to watch the screen while doing this so you can see what I'm seeing. But anyway, the reason I do it this way is because I want my ribbon to flare out, as opposed to if I were to tie it like this, then it is staying in a line. So I want it to flare out, so it has that spring, this spring to it. And then I take my hoop and I thread it through. Ooh, smells like burnt wood. Then pay attention to which way you're going through. So if you go through this way and then loop it like this, it's kind of hard to tell now because I have this going. Then this right here, this full piece, is on the back side. So if you loop it in from the front, so poke it through, going front to back, and then take your piece and go around it. So then on the top, on the bottom rather, you have your ribbon. You couldn't see anything that I was doing because I wasn't actually in view, sorry. You have your ribbon that's wrapped around the top here, and then your pieces that are coming out, and they've got this nice looped flare to it. And then you trim your ribbon ends and cut them at an angle. And there you have your ornament. And then I have boxes actually. I have these nice white boxes that I put them in that have this cotton padding and a clear lid that goes over it. So whenever I'm doing my ornament size, because I do other ornaments other than just picture ones, I make sure that my dimensions of that ornament are going to fit in my box. So that's one thing that we didn't do here, but I didn't bother taking the time because I was trying to focus on showing you all how to do the GIMP process. So again, if you have any questions, just let me know. We did this ornament process here where we double-sided it. We had our editing going in GIMP for our photo. This photo right here. Turned it over here. I figured out how to do the feathered edges afterwards, so when it does it in the engrave, it just would have been a little more faded out around on the edge, which has a really cool effect. Then it imported into Inkscape, and when we were in Inkscape, we put our elliptical circle around it. We added on our hangy piece. I know, technical jargon. We put in a cut box around the outside so that it would work when we're flipping it over. And if you don't play with any of your pieces and it's all centered and you know that your half is going to be mirrored perfectly on one side and the other, then you don't have to worry about that bounding box. But if you have any kind of deviation so that when you go to flip over your piece, it's not going to fit back in. So that's where that box going around the outside can really help. And then we added our text that we were going to have on top of the picture and what we were going to inscribe on the back. So that's all she wrote, folks. Thanks for joining in. Holler if you have questions. Ciao. I have to go make more.